So I'm looking at two stories. I'm looking at all the West Ham stories today, but there's two in particular which are right next to each other and they completely contradict one another, which is what you're dealing with in the transfer window, I guess. One of them says West Ham David Moyes looking to strengthen all areas at the London Stadium. It means players, doesn't mean actually strengthen structurally the London Stadium. The other one says David Moyes has ugly message for West Ham fans ahead of the January transfer window, where he basically goes on to say, we're not signing any players. Let's try and cut through it just a little bit. First of all, the first story that really came to mind was actually Mark Noble. Basically, Mark Noble has said West Ham have got no chance. West Ham have no chance of holding on to Declan Rice. And I don't mind him saying it. I'm glad someone's actually just sort of said it as it is, really. I mean, he's basically said... whether you think things will get dicey at West Ham, I don't believe they will. But we just can't cope financially with the top teams. Dicey, he's talking about relegation, which we'll talk about in a second. I know Gio did a video last night about David Moyes says we're not in a relegation scrap, we're challenging for Europe. There we go, funny, isn't it, really? Anyway, what he said is we can try our hardest to recruit the best players, but the top 5 or 6, we'll always get them. He basically says a couple might slip through the net, but if one of the top clubs wants a player, they just go and get them. He uses the comparison of Jack Grealish, which I don't think is a great comparison because Jack Grealish had a buyout clause of 100 million. It was an open secret, everybody knew it, and Man City just came along with the 100 million. I still do think, by the way, that if somebody came in with 100 million for Declan Rice, I'd be really surprised if that's what he goes for. Not that I don't think he's a good player. I think he's a brilliant player, absolutely amazing player. I really do. But he's not... The premium's on goals, right, in football, just always has been. And I know Virgil van Dijk would probably buck the trend in as much as he cost 75 million as he was a central defender. But £100 million for what inherently is a defensive midfielder... I don't know, it seems like a bit of a stretch. I'd be delighted if we got that. Actually, I'd be more delighted if we kept Declan Rice. I'd rather not sell him. But if the club are holding out for... I did read something the other day that because of his performances in the World Cup, the club would be, more looking at 130 million, something like that. I just don't think we've got any chance at all of getting that level of money. I just don't. Anyway, that's that. There's a load of Wan-Bissaka stuff, which I'm going to leave just for the moment. So here's what David Moyes has to say in his ugly message, basically. He did a big thing on TalkSport, basically. He said, basically, I don't think we'll bring anyone in January. He said, because I have to say the board did really well and spent a good amount of money in the summer. We brought in 9 new players, which is more than anybody would want to do, really. Oh, I mean, I could tear that to bits. I really could. I feel like I'm being pernickety. I don't want to overly be sort of picking on Moyes at the moment because I'd like to think we go and we win the Arsenal game. I don't think we will, as you'll probably see when you watch our preview this evening that I do with Gio. We've already pre-recorded that, by the way. I'm not predicting the future. We've already pre-recorded that preview. I will pick it apart a little bit. Let me just say that. We brought in 9 players, which is more than anybody would want to do. You didn't have to do it that way. You could have brought 3 in the previous window. You could have done something else. I was watching the Jack Mate podcast with Ben Johnson, listening to that. And Ben Johnson said in that it would have been nice to have got some players in the run-up to the Europa, when we basically got to semi-finals and the Europa League. Anyway, there you go. He didn't. He's forced that upon himself. That's his thing. He's the one that had all the money for the striker for 18 months. He's the one that decided to buy all 9 players in one go. He said, but we needed it because we've got a European campaign again and because of the amount of games we played the year before. Even this season, I think we played more games than any other Premier League team at this stage of the season. So we needed to add those players. He does go on to say, though, but January will come. It will. He's not wrong, is it? January will come. I tell you what, there is no doubt about that. January will come, and it'll probably be a no. He means buying players. Unless we need something through injury or someone becomes available. So, we're not going to buy anyone unless somebody becomes available. Well, that's cleared that right up, hasn't it? He said, but in truth, I don't see us doing too much business. Oh, it's all cryptic. It's all very cryptic. Anyway, here's the other one here. So this is from Dharmesh, who's been on this channel on a couple of occasions. We like Dharmesh. West Ham, Madame Chef says West Ham are looking to strengthen in all areas of London State. Oh, excuse me, gave me a little cough then. I mean, he's basically said West Ham will be looking to recruit where possible. Having said that, there's many new players coming at West Ham. I think the priority is to gel these players. But David Moyes has not ruled himself out of bringing players in the market. Now, Darmesh has got a really, really good track record of knowing what is going on at West Ham. Now, this article and a lot of the others, in fact, every article I'm reading has come from the OneFootball app, which you can download by clicking the link below this screen. Now, the OneFootball app, what it's done is it goes around all of the internet and all the newspapers, choosing all of the West Ham stories. Why? Because that's what I've told it to do. That's why we got something from David Moyes that's come from Talk Sport. That's why we got something from Dharma Chef that has come from Sky Sports. There's loads of stuff from all the different newspapers, all the West Ham stories, and what it'll do is it just bundles them up and chucks them at your phone, sends you a little notification and searches and finds all the West Ham news so you don't have to go looking for it. Best of all, the app is free. As I say, please do use the link below and I'll know you've come from Hammer's Chat. So Darmish thinks we're going to be signing someone. Now, he thinks we're at least looking. Now, this leads us to the two players who I think are most likely, which is Ben Brereton Diaz. And there's going to be a lot of this sort of stuff. The question is, can we prize him out of his contract? He's only got a 6 month left at Blackburn Rovers. But as I understand it, and I've not looked, but just this is what I read a few days ago, that Blackburn Rovers were third in the Championship. Is that right? I don't know. If they are, it'd be silly to sell him, really, wouldn't they? Let's be perfectly honest. That being said, you've only got to look at West Ham's striker situation and see how precarious it is. Scamacca's injured, and we just don't know what is going on with Antonio at the moment. Okay, I don't know. He might have a knock. It might be something a little bit more serious. The backup plan, the contingency this season was always going to be that if those two are out, Maxwell Cornet played a striker. He's not reliable anyway. And then you look at it, you think, well, hold on, Jared Bowen's going to move up front. That gives us a base. Basically, and it annoys me. It gives us a defensive player in a wide position, which is not good. It's just not good at all. I love Fornells. I've got a picture of him, so I'm up there. I got a picture of Fornells up there. Lovely picture. El Fornicador, the fornicator. We love a bit of fornicating on this channel, right? I love him. I think he's brilliant. Honestly, his attitude, he's a hard trainer. He's bought into the ethos of the club. Brilliant. I love Pablo Fornells, all right? But he has become a workhorse and a more defensive player. His output in terms of Premier League assists and goals, it is negligible. He's not the guy you want in an attacking position. And unfortunately, because of the situation we find ourselves in, despite David Moyes saying he's buying 9 different players, well, he's bought 9 players, we still find ourselves in a situation where we may well have to play our winger up front and play a defensive player in a wide position. It's quite tedious, actually. It really is. And for that reason, I don't think we can rule out this Ben Brereton Diaz. And whilst I understand what David Moyes is saying, I don't expect David Moyes to say anything other than we're not in a relegation fight. We are. And we've looked shaky at the back, we've also not looked too great at scoring goals this season. So actually, it's all very well people being stubborn saying we're not spending any money. Maybe you will. Maybe you should. Maybe you'll have to. And if you're going to do that, then someone like Ben Brereton Diaz, bearing in mind he can play wide and as a forward, then he shouldn't be discounted at all. We're not going to have to pay a premium because he's out of contract in 6 months' time. Because that was exactly the job that Maxwell Cornet was supposed to do. He was meant to be the wide player who could also play as a striker. If what we're doing is we're going to rely on that for the rest of the season, we can't. We have no evidence to suggest he's going to play. There's no evidence to suggest he is going to come back and he is going to supply what we need, either wide or as that backup striker. And it looks like we'll need the backup striker. It's an annoying thing to have Jared Bowen just starting, it looks like, to come back into form. Then suddenly we're going to tweak his position, change his position again. I don't want to do it. I don't think it's a sensible thing to do at all. Just finally, the last thing on there on the little news roundup was Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Wolves are apparently interested as well, and Crystal Palace as well. I could go into it now. We've already been talking 10 minutes. I'm not going to go too much into it at all now because I just think this is going to run and run, and there'll be other opportunities to talk about that. Again, if there's an opportunity to do so, I think we should do it because clearly David Moyes is not happy with any of his options at right back fully anywhere. Johnson's being used all over the place as a centre back, left back, utility player. Kerr's unconvincing at right back, and well, isn't Soufal close to being out the door? Even Soufal said it. So, I mean, I don't know. Watch this space on that one. I do think Summit should be able to be done on that. And don't rule out just because what David Moyes said. Remember what David Moyes said? If someone becomes available, we might do something. Well, Aaron Wan-Bissaka is available.